What do Falcons do? We rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general, the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, the Golden Hard Dog, and a lifelong sports fan. And I'm coming back to you guys. It is finally time for me to start going through all the divisions and making my predictions, seeing what I think is going to end up happening with them, how the divisions are going to shake out. And we're going to start with my home division in the NFC South. Now, the NFC South, as all of you Falcons fans know, includes the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers, the New Orleans Saints, and our beloved Atlanta Falcons. Last year, everybody finished with Tampa Bay 9-8, New Orleans 9-8, Atlanta 7-10, and Carolina 2-15, which was good enough for the first pick to go to Chicago, who they traded to the year before in the Bryce Young deal. Now, a lot of these teams have made improvements, some of them more so than others, and some have made some rather puzzling moves, looking at you front office of the Falcons, particularly in the draft, but it is what it is, and it's time to start making predictions with the teams and with who they have in the rooms. Let's start off with the last year's division winner, Tampa Bay. They are re-signing Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans. They're getting Levante David, Jordan Whitehead, Antoine Whitfield, and Randy Gregory are some of the notable signings that they are bringing onto the team, but they are going to be losing Ryan Jensen, Ryan Neal, Shaq Barrett is the big one here, and Devin White, who has been kind of the key of their middle linebacking core. So they are going to be losing some guys. They did okay in the draft. They ended up, I believe they ended up going with a tackle, I want to say, in the first round. I could be wrong on that. Just looking at, a center with Graham Barton, and that's going to replace Jensen. They took an edge, Chris Braswell out of Alabama, Tyke Smith out of Georgia for safety, so they're going to have they took a lot of safeties here. Jalen McMillan out of Washington, kind of a deep sleeper there, to kind of want to replace somebody down the line. Bucky Irving, running back out of Oregon. And Elijah Klein, guard out of UTEP, and then Culp out of Washington for tight end. A lot of those other moves don't mean too much, but it is what it is there. Reasonably speaking, they have a tough schedule, and that's what happens when you finish first in the division, because you have to play the number one teams in a lot of other divisions. So this year, some of the tougher games, in addition to playing everybody in our division twice, some of the tougher games on their schedule and looking, they have to go to the Lions, they play the Eagles at home, they go to the Chiefs, they play the 49ers at home, they get the Ravens at home, they have to go to the Cowboys, and they have to go to the Chargers. Their schedule does work out where they don't have to go anywhere particularly cold, particularly in the cold times of the year, but it's still a tough schedule, and those are all games that I could see them losing in addition to one or two division games. So reasonably, with this in mind, even with the re-signings, even with Baker there, I think this is a team that is 10-7 as a ceiling. I think they could be as bad as 5-12, though I don't look for them to be that way. But I do think that for this year, they are not going to win the division, and they're not going to have a winning record, just missing out on it with an 8-9 record is my prediction for them. I know that's not what a lot of Tampa Bay fans like to hear, but you guys are kind of stuck in mediocrity, kind of like the Falcons have been for a while, so it's one of these things. You've got some aging players. It does, Mike Evans is going to fall off a cliff at some point. We just don't know when that is. Hopefully for you guys, it's not anytime soon, but, hopefully for the rest of us, it is. Then we're going to move on to the Carolina Panthers. And Carolina is a garbage dumpster fire of an organization. They fired their coach, Frank Wright, last year, and they ended up bringing in Dave Canales, who's been in a long time position coordinator and was an offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. I'm not going to say that went particularly great, but he had success, especially towards the end of the year. And he is taking over as the head coach. And I feel like this is a job that when they were hiring for, it's kind of like, we just need somebody. Anybody that wants to get a chance to prove themselves and build their resume, if you do great here, you can do great anywhere. And that's kind of the mentality they went in with hiring. But, notable additions, they did get Rashad Penny. Deontay Johnson's really the only big wide receiver name that they got. They're losing a bunch of them, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I didn't see that they have really added, other than in the draft, one guy. They get Jadeveon Clowney. They get Damian Lewis at guard. Robert Hunt at guard. Both of those guys got big deals. Derek Brown, they re-signed, the heart and soul of their defensive line. Big re-signing for him. I think it was somewhere around $96 million for several years. And then they also ended up getting a Sean Robinson and Jose Jewell. or Josie Jewell. I'm not sure how you actually say his name, but all of those are pretty decent signings. I feel like they overpaid for some of these guys, but you kind of have to get people to come and play for Carolina, which has been a garbage organization for a couple of years now and didn't seem to be getting any better. They are going to be protecting their main asset in Bryce Young and hoping to help him develop. They are losing DJ Shark, Leonard Chenault, Hayden Hurst, Bradley Bozeman at center. The big one is Brian Burns traded. I think it was for a 6th-round pick, which was I don't know, maybe it was a 2nd-rounder. It was something absurd for Brian Burns going to New York, and they will have to play him. There will be a revenge game at some point this season. I believe it's in the middle of the year in November. So he will get to come home, and I don't know if it'll be the boos or the cheers, but we'll see what happens. They're losing Shaq Griffin, C.J. Henderson. I don't know. That's a huge loss on C.J. Henderson. Von Bell, big loss in the backfield. And then Deion Jones as well. He didn't really play much for him this past year, but it was kind of a FU signing for Carolina to the Falcons since he was one of our guys at one point in time. It's still going to be tough. You guys get the Bengals, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys all at home. You go to the Eagles in December. You have the Cardinals, and you have to go to the Bears. So not necessarily the toughest, cross-division opponents for a lot of those, but you still have to play everybody in the division, and I'm not sure you win a single game there. It's going to be tough this year. I do think you're going to be better than 2-15, but I don't think it's going to be by a whole lot. I think your ceiling is 8-9. I think your floor is a little bit better than last year's floor at 3-14, but I think it could be another bad year. And then I think that you're actually going to go about 5-12. I have not done the rest of the organization yet, but I would imagine that's going to be towards the bottom, picking in the top 5 again. Not the worst thing in the world because you missed out on your top 5 pick last year. They did bring in guys like Xavier Leggett and Jonathan Brooks for offensive power. We'll see if those guys end up panning out, but I don't have a lot of faith in it. I know that the Carolina Nation is hopeful. I will be going to one of those games this year with the Falcons. Got a work friend who is a season ticket holder, so I probably will be going to Carolina at some point this season. I think it's week 6. Then we're going to jump into New Orleans. Again, finishing 9-8 last year. I thought that was a little bit of an overproduction for them. But they ended up getting Chase Young in the offseason. Demario Davis at linebacker re-signed. Tyrann Mathieu re-signed, and they got Willie Gay Jr. Those are the big notable ones. It's always weird because they're in cap hell most of the time, and they really, because of that, are stuck in mediocrity. The Falcons have been there. A lot of teams have been there. They would do well by just taking one bad year to eat a bunch of bad contracts and then freeing up cap for the future. But they want to try and stay competitive, especially with the big contract that they have with David Carr. But they did draft well, getting a tackle in Fuega, is how I think you say his name. And then they got a guy that the Falcons faithful really liked in Kool-Aid McKinstry. Guy thought might go to the end of the first round for corner, and the guy who the Falcons faithful were hoping we might get, especially when we traded up, but we didn't. They didn't have a pick for a while. They ended up getting Spencer Rattler, who may end up being the heir apparent to Carr, but we'll see. They lose Michael Thomas. They lose Jimmy Graham. Andres Pete, I think it might be addition by subtraction, but you're losing a tackle who's been there for like 8 years. You're losing Cameron Irving, Malcolm Roach, Lonnie Johnson. There's a few guys that you're losing there that are going to be tough to replace. And then your schedule, you go to the Cowboys, to the Chiefs, to the Chargers. You get the Browns at home. You get the Rams at home. You have to go to the Packers in December. I believe that's the Christmas week game. That's going to be tough. And you go to the Giants in December. Again, not that the Giants are necessarily going to be the toughest team, but you're going as a dome team to an outdoor stadium in December. That's never an easy situation. It's harmed the Saints in the past. It's harmed the Falcons in the past. And it's definitely something you don't want to have to do if you can avoid it. Reasonably speaking, though, it's not the toughest schedule in the world. And I could see a world, even with the losses on the team, I could see a world because of Olave, because of Kamara, because of all the talent that they do have. I can see a world where they, as a ceiling, go 12-5. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think their floor is better than everybody else's so far at 6-11. And again, I think that's it. The wheels absolutely just fell off. I still think they're a 6-11 team with this schedule. And I reasonably think that 9-8 again is going to be a reasonable result for them. plus or minus sneaking into the playoffs. Again, I haven't looked at everybody else's schedule, so a winning record in the NFC could be enough to get you there. We'll see when it all shakes out. But I think that 9-8 is a very reasonable result. 10-7 maybe, but I think it's tough to say you're better than you were last year, but I don't think you're a lot worse for sure. Then you go to our beloved Atlanta Falcons, who have finished 7-10 3 years in a row, picked 8th 3 years in a row in the draft, and are looking to make some big changes this year, doing the yeoman's work in free agency and doing God knows what in the draft. But anyways, because of the moves we have made, because of getting rid of Arthur Smith, an addition by subtraction move as far as I'm concerned in all regards, I think that that's a great move. We end up bringing back Raheem Morris. I don't know what Morris is going to be. He's been a solid defensive coordinator since his time as a head coach like 17 years ago. That did not go well for Tampa Bay. He was with us in our Super Bowl run. We'll see. He was with the Rams in their Super Bowl run where they actually did win it all. He's coached up guys who were low-end talent in the NFL to be high-end talent. I do have faith in him. He's bringing Zach Robinson, who's going to be a first-time shot caller, but has been the quarterback whisperer for years with Sean McVay. And then he's also bringing in Jimmy Lake, who's bounced around the college level and was with Raheem Morris as a defensive staff over in L.A., coming over as our defensive coordinator. We'll see what happens. He's pretty good with secondary components, so we'll see if that improves at all. But we are losing Ryan Nielsen as well, which is definitely a subtraction by subtraction. We gain nothing by losing him, and that was really sad to me. But we are also, again, we're getting Cousins, Mooney. We get Rondale Moore in the trade. We got Ray McLeod. Charlie Warner as a blocking tight end, and Antonio Hamilton as a corner. Don't know that any of those last moves are going to be particularly impactful, but we are losing a lot of guys here that had an impact this past year, particularly Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree. We're losing Jonnu Smith, though he didn't really have a role in this offense. Mac Hollins couldn't really stay healthy for us. Trey Flowers was mid for us. Jeff Okudah started hot, ended poorly, so not necessarily a big loss there. Matt Hennessy as a backup guard, former backup center, he just couldn't stay healthy, and it wasn't a surprise that he ended up not getting re-signed. Cordero Patterson, older running back / receiver, not surprised that he didn't get re-signed. A lot of fans are upset with that one. Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller, neither of whom had a huge role for the team after a lot of hype last year in the offseason. Not great here. And then for our draft, obviously we end up taking Michael Penix, who's going to sit. We end up not really taking any guys who are supposed to be day one starters. Rook Aroro may end up being a day one start, may end up being a starter at some point. Might start at as DT number 3 somewhere. Or they might move into the edge a little bit. Don't know. I do like him. When I hear his interviews, I think he sounds like a very motivated player. He seems to have a high degree of intelligence to him, and I think that's going to serve him well in the NFL. So I look for him to end up being a huge impact player for us at some point. And then we got Braylon Trice, who will step in as a boost to the edge as well. So we'll see what happens there. But tough games that we have. We have a revenge game for Arthur Smith, or really I'm going to say it's a revenge game for the Falcons because of how poorly managed we were under him. With the Steelers coming to Atlanta week 1. We go to the Eagles, and then we have the Chiefs. This is all the first 3 weeks, by the way. Then we have 3 straight freaking division games in a 2-week time frame. We play the Saints on Sunday afternoon football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the subsequent Thursday night for football, and then 10 days later, we play the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. We play 10 division games in the first, 5 division games in the first 10 weeks of the season, which is nuts to me. And then our bye week is week 12, so we're going to have a very front-loaded schedule. So far, all of those games I mentioned are early games. And then you have the Seahawks and the Cowboys, which are also early games. You have to go to the Vikings, to the Raiders on Monday Night Football, and then to the Commies. And the Commies I would not say is a particularly tough team, though they have beat us this last year, predominantly due to bad quarterback play. But it's in late December, and I do not ever like going to FedEx Field anytime in the winter because injuries happen there. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. I've already said my hot take for the season is the Falcons finish 14-3. I'm going to keep that as our ceiling. I do not see that being the actual end record, but it would be certainly a hot take and one that I hope happens. Our floor, I think, actually is 7-10. I don't think we finish worse than that with the schedule, with the team that we have. I just can't see a world with this offensive firepower, with the 2 running backs, with the additions in the wide receiver room, with Kyle Pitts finally getting a quarterback who knows what the heck he's doing, and Zach Robinson being the quarterback whisperer and hopefully a solid offensive coordinator. I just don't see how this can go anything but a winning record for the Falcons, and I do have us finishing 11-6, winning the NFC South. That's all I got for you guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing. I've got the other 7 divisions coming out over the course of the next few weeks. And as always, rise up.